If it's fine with you guys, I'll just start right now because I doubt if people haven't joined already, they'll join in the future. Okay, so welcome to Blossom's webinar for introducing the IB curriculum. Thank you so much for everyone that could join today. Really appreciate it. If Stanley was here, who's the CEO of Blossom, he would have given a couple of words, but since he's not here right now, it's just going to be me. So a little about myself. My name is Ishani, and I graduated from the IB curriculum as well in 2018. I'm currently a graduate at the Chinese University of Hong Kong, and I have a degree in energy and environmental engineering. And I have 5 years of tutoring experience in Hong Kong for IB, MYP, and IGCSE curriculums. And I'm also currently working with Blossom for marketing and sales. And I'm also the IB English language and literature tutor at Blossom. So a little bit about the IB. So I'm sure those of us that have joined today are very familiar that it's a 2-year program that's offered in countries all over the world. And it's very good for students that are looking to study abroad after they finish high school or that are planning to move during the last 2 years of their high school experience, because it's very easy to transition into the IB curriculum regardless of which school you study at. Also, it's a very challenging curriculum for a lot of students because there are some components that they might not be familiar with. So as you can see from this slide, Hong Kong has quite a high IB average. And in general, Asia has a high average compared to the rest of the world because Asia has a lot of tutoring and private teaching resources that are not necessarily available to the rest of the world. And what Blossom really wants to do is reduce that margin between the quality of the materials that are available in Hong Kong and the rest of the world, regardless of whatever time zone or place you might be. We just want to make sure that our students can get the highest quality tutoring or private educational resources available pertaining to the IB curriculum. So we're all familiar that most educational programs have the basic subjects like languages, mathematics, and sciences. But what makes the IB really stand out is that there are also these 3 other components that students have to complete in order to get their IB diploma, which are the extended essay, theory of knowledge, also called TOK, and creativity, action, and service, also called CAS hours. So for the extended essay, it's a 4,000-word independent research that the student has to take up. They can choose to do it in any of the subjects that are offered by the IB curriculum. They can also choose to do it in an interdisciplinary subject. After selecting what subject they want to explore and their research question, they're usually assigned a subject teacher, and that subject teacher advises them on their essay, and their grades are given externally. All IB extended essays are graded by an external examiner. So regardless of whatever predicted or whatever mock grades subject teachers or their supervisors might give, the ultimate grade for the extended essay is determined by the external examiner. And one thing that can be quite challenging for students when completing the extended essay is it's not one of those assignments you can complete in a night because it's 4,000 words. That's why they have to really pace themselves and discipline themselves throughout the whole IB1 and IB2 in order to finish it and meet the deadline. Usually it's submitted around March to manage back. And after that, they're more free to focus on studying for the independent subjects. And TOK is another one of those curriculums that the IB assesses. It's an epistemological philosophical subject. It's very abstract in its assessments, which are a 1,600-word essay and a 10 to 15-minute oral presentation. Usually TOK teachers at schools are subject teachers who are also teaching TOK on the side. So it might be a math teacher and an English teacher. They will have their own classes for TOK. And because most of these teachers don't necessarily have a background in philosophy, the students might not really understand, or they might not really grasp the philosophical aspect of it due to the lack of expertise of the instructors. And TOK asks a lot of theoretical questions about the nature of knowledge. How do we learn knowledge? How can we assess knowledge? And it's very difficult for high schoolers that are 15, 16, 17-year-olds to use abstract thinking, which is developed only later on in adolescence, which is why it can be challenging for some students to write these complex answers to very basic questions, so to speak, but those are actually very deceptive, the questions that they might ask for TOK. Students usually receive prompts for TOK essays each year, and it's also submitted at the same time as EEs and IAs, which are internal assessments, in March. And CAS is also one of the most easiest parts of IB, arguably, but also one of the most tedious ones. It's 50 hours of creativity, 50 hours of action, and 50 hours of service. So cumulatively 150 hours of any of these extracurricular activities that students have to document and upload to Manage Back, which is the internal portal for submitting IB documents. And for each activity, they also have to get supervisor approval and feedback. Once that is submitted to the IB, once their 150 hours are complete, they can easily get their diploma for CAS. So it's tedious, but it's also not very difficult to spend 50 hours for each of these fields in extracurriculars. For a lot of these subjects, or a lot of these activities, the schools might have clubs or volunteering trips or a lot of sports opportunities or events available. So it's easy for students to fill up these hours. So it's one of the times that students can balance their extracurriculars with their academics as well and get credit for it. So the syllabus in general for IB, there are 6 subjects, and students can choose to take at least they have to take 3 higher levels and 3 standard levels. However, some students can take 4 as well, depending on the school and their IB coordinators. And they can choose which subjects they want to take at which level. And usually for higher level courses, it's 240 hours of teaching. And for standard level subjects is 150 hours of teaching. Therefore, the studying gap between SL and HL for humanities related subjects is actually a lot less, because the assessments are more or less similar, despite the content being a lot more deeper and broader, compared to the assessments for standard and higher level subjects relating to sciences or language acquisition, in which the gap between SL and HL is a lot larger. So if a student wants to transition from one level to another for the same subject later on, it might be easier to do so for groups 1, 3, and 6 compared to groups 2, 4, and 5 later on in IB. And I personally did 4 higher levels. One of them was in group 1, language and literature, which was relatively easy to handle compared to the group 4 and group 5 higher levels that I took. So it's a good chance for students to have other higher levels if they take humanities subjects at a higher level. And here are the subject groups. For group 1, it's based on learning a language that they're fluent in and studying the literary and language components. So they can take English at literature, or French, language and literature. They can also study Spanish if they have that available in their school. Usually most students take English. For language and literature, students study a mixture of regular literary texts, such as novels and poems and stories, alongside media and communications. For language A literature, students only focus on novels and stories and only literary texts. Some schools in the UK, like universities, they don't really recognize language and literature. So if a student is planning to apply to such a school, they might want to communicate with them early on if they recognize language and literature as a viable subject. And if not, then they should consider taking language literature, just literature for English. Language acquisition for group 2, students can choose between classical languages, language at level B, which means they're fluent at it, but not enough to be able to analyze literary texts, and language ab initio, which is for complete beginner level understanding and exposition to the language. And for language B, the assessments are mostly related to comprehension and basic grammar, and ab initio is very basic understanding of the language. And students can choose a variety of languages for language acquisition depending on what's offered at their school. if there is any language that they want to take either at language A level or language B level, or even ab initio that's not offered at their school, they can contact their IB coordinator, who will arrange for an external teacher via IB's internal online learning system, which is Pamoja, and they will have online lessons for that specific subject with that teacher, who is also affiliated with the IB. For group three, which are individuals and societies, you can see it's a lot of social studies related subjects. So depending on what's offered at their school, students can choose a variety of subjects between business economics and history. A lot of these courses, some of them have mathematical components like economics and business. However, some of these courses have a lot of essay components like history and philosophy and psychology as well. So it really depends on what the student wants to study. Do they prefer something that's more analytical, or do they want something that's more based on writing? And for experimental sciences group 4, we have the basics, biology, physics, and chemistry. There's also options to study computer science, design tech, and sports exercise and health science. So depending on, again, what's offered at their school, students have to take one group 4 level subject. There's one that's not mentioned here, which is ESS, Environmental Systems and Sciences. And for ESS, it's an interdisciplinary subject. It falls between group 4 and group 3, so students can choose which slot they want to take ESS in, and it's only offered at standard level. So students that don't really enjoy hard mathematics or hard level sciences, they can consider ESS as an option for them for a group 4 subject. For mathematics, group 5, there are 2 separations. Each of them are offered at standard level and higher level. So mathematics, analysis, and approaches is a more theoretical take on mathematics. The exams do not allow for calculators. Therefore, most of the questions are based in theory. And for mathematics, applications, and interpretation, it's mostly based on practical applications of mathematics. And the exams require a calculator for the student. And usually students can choose which one they want to take. Students that are applying for perhaps engineering or economics in university, they might consider applications and interpretation a bit more useful than analysis and approaches. However, students that want to study more theoretical subjects later on can take analysis and approaches. For group 6, it's an optional field for students who want to pursue arts later on or who want to take a group 6 subject. Depending on their school, they can take an option for theater, visual arts, music, film, and dance. Usually most schools have theater and visual arts, and some schools even offer music. For music, there is an auditory component to the exam, but regardless of that, some of the other components of most of these arts subjects require developing a portfolio that gets sent to the IB and moderated. So for group 6 subjects, it's great for students that plan to apply to art schools later on because they get the chance to develop that portfolio. So how can people choose the right subjects for themselves or maybe their children as well, for those of us that are parents here today? So of course, we have to consider the university admissions requirements. What subjects should they study at what level in order to admit to that specific degree? For example, students that want to study engineering should consider taking higher level mathematics, physics, and chemistry. And students that want to study medicine are recommended to take higher level biology and chemistry. Some students choose to take higher level psychology, or they can also choose to take higher level languages or anything really, but biology and chemistry are usually recommended. And the students should also consider what are their personal strengths that they want to develop, what skills do they have that they can really use to their advantage in each subject. Most IB subjects, all IB subjects are graded externally by 80%, which means regardless of the predicteds that they might get from their mock exams at school, the final result that's released on the 5th of July, most of it, 80% of it, is coming from their external assessments. Therefore, the conditional offers that universities give ultimately rely on the final result that students might get. Therefore, they really have to make sure that they can easily adjust to the subjects that they're taking. Also, what subjects are available at their school. So some schools might not offer all subjects, in which case they should open communication with their IB coordinator about facilitating them to take certain subjects. Perhaps students that might be native in Korean that are studying at a school in Poland, which doesn't offer Korean as a subject, could contact their IB coordinator to arrange for an external teacher, in which case they can still take the external assessment for Korean, and they can avoid taking any other languages for group 2 or group 3, group 1 or group 2, or because they will have the Korean language for it. So in the middle of all of this is the ideal subject mix for some students. And some students, they get really high scores because they take subjects that are quote unquote easy for them. However, later on, they might struggle with admissions requirements. So it really depends on getting the right mix of subjects. Universities prefer that a student takes the right subjects over getting a high score. So overall, the IB grading system is given out of 45 points total. So for each of the 6 subjects, the student can get a grade from 1 to 7, 7 being the highest. And that gives us 42 points. And then according to the following matrix, any combination of A's and B's for TOK and extended essays can give them up to 3 points. And any other combination of C's and D's with B's and A's will give them 2 points. However, it is mandatory that students pass their EE and TOK in order to get their IB diploma. If students don't meet this condition, they might not receive their diploma. Maybe the school or maybe the IB board will give them a certificate instead. And a passing score for IB is 24 points at the very least. However, most students get a 24 or above. Just like it's very hard to get a 45 in IB, it's also very difficult for students to fail if they did the bare minimum at the very least. So some tips for success in IB are, of course, students need to be very open-minded. The IB encourages people to take independent learning very seriously. Each of the Group 4 sciences, as well as a lot of the other Group 3 subjects, require students to submit independent assessments. In fact, even mathematics has independent assessments, internal assessments called IAs, and students have to really be open-minded in formulating questions and being willing to think outside the box. Students should also be very disciplined because it's actually comparable. The IB curriculum, the higher level subjects especially, are almost comparable to first-year university level studies. Therefore, it might be very difficult for a couple students to adjust to the gap from their 10th grade to their first year of IB. Therefore, developing that discipline and grit is also important. Also, getting the structure and organization for all their subjects is a crucial part of making sure that they can meet all the IB deadlines because, as I mentioned, TOK and EE and CAS are all submitted in March, which is before they have to submit, before they can start preparing for their final exams. However, during that time, all their internal assessments are also due. So throughout the 2 years, they have to schedule when they're going to finish their IA, which CAS activities they're going to plan, and which ones they're going to participate in, and when to perform their IA experiments, or when will they finish submitting their independent thesis or essays. So because of that, organization is very important in IBs to make sure students can reach their deadlines on time. And because of CAS, the students have a great opportunity to balance their personal life with academics because it's a requirement by the IB, and they can get credit for it. So it's one of the more enjoyable aspects of the whole IB experience. So some questions students can ask themselves when they're looking for private tutors are they struggling with any exams or assignments in particular for specific subjects? And does their school offer enough support for the assessments that are in place at school? And do they have availability of enough practice questions or test preparation materials to make sure that they can be ready for the exams? And also, can they afford the tuition fee? Private tuition may not be the best solution for all students, especially those that prefer independent learning. So many IB schools are promoting online learning. Like I mentioned, the IB has its own online learning platform, Pamuja, in which students can connect with other IB subject tutors, other IB subject teachers for subjects that are not offered in their school. So we can already see from this adaptation that the IB is very receptive to online learning. And online learning also boosts morale for students to learn independently, which is a great skill to have in university or even in your work life. So online learning really helps students commit to memory faster because of the audiovisual guides that it provides. Also, because online learning is self-paced, you can choose to watch videos at 2 times speed or 3 times speed, which might help students remember faster as well. Online learning also helps students focus better because they can choose when they are in the zone to learn. They can also control their environment better, which can boost their focus and attention to detail. They can also make decisions on a variety of notes available. They can choose to look at handouts or specific assessments as well as videos. So that autonomy really helps students focus their attention on things that they really need help with. And online learning, of course, really helps boost motivation for students to develop that discipline in themselves to make themselves learn. They can also get excited when learning something and tracking their own progress. For group tutoring or one-on-one tutoring sessions, students might sometimes feel disconnected from the tutor and the material. However, with engaging in online learning, they can get closer to the material, and it really helps students with not really feeling obligated to participate in group sessions or one-on-one tutoring. And it also, of course, offers higher flexibility. For some students, they might prefer working at night, in which case they can't really arrange for a tutor at that time unless they're in a different time zone. And video learning is also adjustable, so they can look at whatever parts they wish or whatever materials they want for how many ever times they wish to replay. So I personally, when I was studying IB, private tuition was really not something I considered because I was hesitant as a student, like, oh, it costs so much money. And when I tried to look for resources online, I probably spent more time looking for resources than I did actually using them. And also, it's a very limited amount of questions available openly because the IB likes to protect its exams and papers with copyright. And also, because of the syllabus changes throughout the couple years, you might not find IB papers relevant to your year. And IB has been around since 1968. So the exams that they had back in even 2014 don't really apply to the exams that we are taking now in the recent years. So some of the resources that we have partnered with at Blossom are Grade Gorilla. Grade Gorilla is organized by another IB teacher at a school in Hong Kong. And they have a lot of resources available for Group 4 subjects, especially sciences. So students can practice a variety of IB style quizzes and questions prepared by teachers. Therefore, they don't really have to spend their own time looking for these resources that are already available and prepared by teachers that know and are familiar with the content that will be on the test. And we have also partnered with PrepApe, who we were inviting to our current webinar actually, but because of some difficulties, they were not able to join. And PrepApe is a Germany-based startup, and they provide marked IAs and EE and TOK essays for IB students. They can choose to purchase these essays and see the examiner comments on them. and they can compare those comments with the content on their own essays and use that as reference to polish their own work. And of course, since we're partnering with them from Blossom, we also provide a couple of their resources to our students with the examiner comments and their markings to hopefully boost the quality of work that students submit to the IB, which get marked externally. And at Blossom, we offer online learning courses as well for IB students. We're not a generic tutoring service. What we really offer is hours and hours of video content that students can choose to watch at their own pace and engage with assignments and learning activities. And they have a group discussion forum available where tutors will provide them support depending on the time that they post and their availability. So it's a very flexible system for students to learn. So it's not like the regular online tutoring service, online or even in-person tutoring, where you're like attached to a specific person and you have to constantly communicate with them. In the online discussion forum, students can also engage with peer-to-peer learning. And so for Blossom, we really try to make it as affordable as possible so students can learn anywhere at any time. And we try to cover the content of a course in 24 hours. And for each of our courses, we also provide a lot of notes for the students in terms of revision. Of course, we encourage them to take their own notes as well. But if they don't want to do that, or if they don't have enough time, they can look at the notes that we have prepared, or our tutors have prepared. And our tutors are also very qualified. We usually select tutors that are either recent IB graduates who have gotten a 7, therefore they're in touch with the syllabus, and they're also familiar with the subject and are very good at it. And we also have some tutors that are professional IB teachers or that have external teaching experience and a deep level of expertise in the subject. And like I mentioned, with peer-to-peer learning, we really try to offer a comprehensive learning experience with Blossom. So first, students can engage with their expert learning with the courses and the learning activities. Students can also learn with themselves, which is the learning activities. And in the self-learning activities, they can monitor their own progress on the dashboard. And then in the next part for peer-to-peer learning, like I mentioned, the online discussion platform, they can engage with questions asked by their peers, they can answer them, and they can also receive feedback from the tutors who are the experts in that discussion forum. So overall, for Blossom, we try to bring the most flexible and affordable cost to students. And you can watch our courses from anywhere at any time. And it's customizable. Students can watch only the parts that they need or only the material that they don't understand. Therefore, you don't have to worry about private tutoring where students and the tutor might be disconnected from the content that's actually being covered in class. And there's an unlimited amount of replay frequency. We don't barricade the amount of times a student can watch something. And our modules are structured according to the assessments that are given by the IB for that subject. And we also provide the notes and tutor support required for them to succeed. And because everything is available at the student's hands, they can choose to improve and in a fairly short period of time, depending on how much time they spend on our platform learning that course. They can also choose to learn ahead of their class because the content is already available on our platform. And for parents especially, they can choose to monitor their children's progress with our dashboard. And of course, the child has the option to choose if they don't want to share that information. But it's also great to have someone to hold them accountable in finishing this because we understand there might be a disconnect in online learning compared to one-on-one tuition, where you have a teacher or a figure holding you accountable. Therefore, we integrated this system for monitoring their progress so that we can enforce that accountability for them to finish their course. And parents can trust us because we have a variety of learning activities relevant to the IB syllabus. And we really care about enhancing children's learning and as well as encouraging them to be self-initiated learners. We don't want them to just be spoon-fed like they are in usual tutoring. We want them to be curious and really engage with the content. And they also receive support from our tutors to develop that inquisitiveness through our discussion platform. And our prices are also very flexible. Usually for private tutoring in Hong Kong, it costs about $100 per hour. In other parts of the world, it might range anywhere from $20 to $50 per hour. Our courses are, in general, $26 per hour. Of course, our courses are not on an hourly basis because students are purchasing the whole course, all the content of 24 hours at once. But usually it's still a lot more affordable compared to private tutoring, where each session, each week costs $100 perhaps. Our course, for one time, they will pay a fee that will last, the whole course will last them till they graduate from the IB. And we have a lot of courses available, so students can choose to either purchase depending on their level and the subject. So they can choose to purchase standard level or higher level physics. And they can also choose to purchase individual modules depending on the syllabus components, such as animal physiology for biology or abnormal psychology for psychology. And if they choose to purchase independent modules, then they can choose to purchase additional ones later on. That's not a problem at all. And if they choose to purchase the whole course, then they can pay in installments as well. Therefore, there is really a lot of flexible options for students on the courses that they can purchase. And some of the current courses that we're really pushing are the IB English guys, who are Andrew Cohen and Dave Gillis. They're both IB English teachers available in Thailand currently. Their resources are used by a lot of IB English teachers all over the world, and they really have a lot of experience with teaching, particularly IB subjects. Therefore, they're very reliable, and we're currently offering some of their support of IB English to our students. We also have Sophie Muscatelli, who's an IB BNM teacher, business and management teacher based in Greece. She has a PhD and 10 plus years of experience in business and management. Therefore, she is extremely qualified in the subject, and she is also an IB teacher at one of the schools in Greece. Therefore, she has a deep understanding of the syllabus content and the required assessments for that course. So if you want to get a 7 at home without spending too much time in private tuition and really taking control of your online learning, at Blossom, we're offering that option to our students. And with this code, the first 20 signups can get 20% off from our courses. So you're free to ask us any questions now as well. We're just opening the floor to Q&A. You can message me or Stanley for any questions you might have, or you can later on email us or via any channel of communication. We'll try to get back to you as soon as possible. So let's see if there are any questions right now.
Thank you so much, Ishani. So actually, I received a question. I received 2 questions from the parents, so I'll address them, I think. The first question would be about, hey, Stanley, you mentioned about the Blossom's online courses, $26 per hour, yeah? And so are your courses by hourly rate, or is it like, what does it mean? Okay, so yeah, so sorry that we may not have explained it very clearly. So we are not charging our courses per hour. We are kind of like, the whole online course is like video content plus notes plus a lot of learning activities like module quizzes, like practice questions, and you can ask the tutors at as many things as you want in the private discussion forum. We were showing that kinds of figures because we try to compare us with the private tuition, because I can tell you the average private tuition rate in Hong Kong is $100 per hour, which is crazy. Around the world, it is like 50 to $80 per hour. So still, it is very expensive. An average IB student, if they take one subject tuition every single week for 1 year, the price would be around 5.2K US dollars for a single subject in a year. But in Blossom, we are covering the whole 2-year program in just 24 hours. And the cost is around $600, 600 US dollars. So what we're trying to do is to provide the students more affordable alternative, and you don't really need to sit there 2 hours every single week, because you can just watch the materials whenever you want. Maybe some students are just struggled right before the exam, then you just watch the videos before the exams. Maybe some students want continuous help, or they want to learn things faster than the school progress. Then you purchase the course and then you learn it by yourself. So when the teachers are actually talking about the courses in the day school, you will have a much solider understanding about the course. This is what we're trying to do. Thanks a lot for the question. This is very good. The second question would be, so how do we find our instructors? It is, again, a very good question. So I can make sure that all the instructors that we find are either previous IB students or they are certified IB teachers, right? So they have a solid understanding about the IB system, and they have a good grades from IB. So all the previous IB students scored a 7 in the corresponding subject that they're teaching, right? And then for the IB teachers, definitely, because they have been teaching that subject in the international school. But more importantly, we don't just value about their whether they're qualified, whether they're experienced, because it is the basic of the basic to be qualified and experienced to become a tutor, become an instructor, right? So we try to observe if the tutor, if the instructor have a strong organization and presentation skill, because he's trying to make everything into a generic video course, right, for the students. So he needs to make sure that every single student or most of the students can comprehend what he's talking about and get what they want. So it is very important for the tutor to have a strong organization and presentation skills. So these are the qualities that we're looking for, and definitely they need to be passionate about teaching students, because we understand that for online courses, it may lack a little bit of human interactions comparing to private tuition. Therefore, we ask the tutors to be as engaging as possible, to be as friendly as possible, to let the students feel more engaged, feel more comfortable while watching the videos. So yeah, these are the criteria that we're asking the tutors. Okay, and another question. Hi, Stanley. Is the purchased course has any time limit to expire, or it will be available for me forever? It is indeed a very good question. So the course will be available to you until your IB program is finished, until you have taken your IB exams. The reasons are, after the IB exams, you no longer need the course because you're going to university, right? So we will remove the access from you, but within the IBDP program, you can watch the videos as many times as you want. So there is no time limit within your IBDP program. And also, we won't, shut down the server sometime. So you don't need to worry about maybe sometimes you can't watch the video. It is really unlikely to happen. Yep.
Okay, that's great then. Do we have any other questions or anything else that you want to add onto our presentation?
Yeah, I think I've answered all the questions, and I think they are very, very good. Once again, thank you very much for participating in this webinar. And I think we've covered all.
Yes, okay, so that's great. And we will share the recording for this session with those who attended. And we will also be sending the PowerPoint slides that we prepared, so that information will be available to you regardless of your attendance now or whatever notes you took right now. So hopefully that's useful for you to make decisions for yourself or your child if you're watching as a parent. And we really appreciate you making the time for us today. We understand it's quite late for some people, so we really, really appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Bye bye.
Bye.